One of the things I've learned as a leader is like you can try to make all your weaknesses into strengths, but that's going to be an uphill battle. The good thing as leaders is like you can just hire people that have strengths that you don't have and allow that, to kind of just happen organically and naturally. And so it's something that, I still want to work on.
Hello, this is Julian Castelli. I'm the host of the Growth Elevated Leadership Podcast, where each week we talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders in the tech industry. Past guests have included CEOs and CXOs of great companies like Workfront, CHG Healthcare, Pathology Watch, InMoment, Canopy, the San Francisco 49ers, and many more. This episode is brought to you by Growth Elevated. We are a community of tech founders, CEOs, and CXOs who are committed to working together to share best practices and learnings in an effort to help all of us become better leaders. We do this through educational programs like this podcast, as well as our blog, and of course, our annual Ski and Tech Summit, where we bring tech leaders to beautiful Park City, Utah to enjoy the camaraderie and collaboration in the beautiful mountains of Utah. So if you're a skier and you enjoy the outdoors and like networking with other tech leaders, check us out at growthelevated.com, and please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Today, I'm super excited to welcome Michael Guymon to the podcast. Michael is the president and CEO of SQA Services. They are a global leader in supplier quality and risk management solutions. Since joining in 2022, Michael has driven a data and technology-forward approach to proactive supply chain assurance. Guymon previously held leadership roles in supply chain and quality engineering at SpaceX, Rocket Lab USA, and Heliogen, supporting the industry, some of the industry's most demanding production environments. Michael, welcome to the program today.
Thanks, Julian.
Thanks for being with us.
Good to be here. Really appreciate it.
So you're coming into your fourth year now as a CEO and leader. Give us a little bit of your background and how you got to SQA.
For sure. Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a convoluted route. I didn't expect to end up here, especially not in this role. But I was a mechanical engineering student. I always, was into really cars and wanted to go the automotive route. And then at our career fair at Texas A&M, there was a company called SpaceX there. And I was like, you know what? Rockets are interesting. They go fast and make noise too. So started a conversation there, ended up taking that as my first job out of school, moved out to California.
What a rocket ship move.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So at the time I was interviewing
Couldn't resist.
I was interviewing with BNSF Railway. I had an offer from them, and then I was interviewing with John Deere and then SpaceX. So I was like, all right, trains, tractors, and rockets. I feel like,
Wow,
4-year-old Michael
like
would be
others?
really proud of my options. Yeah. So I went the rocket route, and definitely turned out to be the right move. Wild place to start your career. This was in 2013. We were launching, 2-3 rockets a year. And Elon wanted to get to a rate of building 40 a year and then eventually like launching every day. So, rather monumental task. And so started in supplier quality there. We kind of reorged several times, grew into a supplier development organization, took on some additional responsibilities, then moved into the tooling group for a while. And then met a director there who went on to a company called Rocket Lab. And then once he got there, he said, hey, Michael, you should come check out Rocket Lab too. So moved over there, ran supply chain and quality for the US. And it was kind of like going back in a time machine from SpaceX back into the early days, because they were, again, launching, a couple times a year.
So they were further ahead. Rocket Lab was catching up. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was cool, though, because I got to go back with at least some experience and knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we tried this.
You're literally coming from the future. What an asset you must have been coming to that business saying, okay, you know exactly where we're going.
Yeah. So that was a, fun experience, and then ended up leaving there and going to Heliogen, solar energy startup, was like supply chain employee number one. And that was, an even bigger kind of task of getting from this little prototype idea into this, mass manufacturing environment. And about a year into that, the founder and CEO of SQA Services reached out to me, and was like, "Hey, Michael, it's been a while. We should catch up." So when I was at SpaceX, we were running a lot of supplier quality initiatives, source inspection, onboarding and approval of our suppliers. And we started using SQA to do all of that. And so I got to know the founder and CEO from that as a client, basically. And so we stayed loosely in touch over the years. And he, called me, or texted me and said, "Hey, let's catch up. Let's get breakfast this week." 2 days later, went over, had a really good conversation with him, and he kicked it off with, I love this company. I built it with my dad. I've run it for 27 years. The clients that we've built, the relationships, the services that we do are super important. I built it with my dad, and there's like a special element of that, of like running this, kind of family business. But after 27 years of being a CEO, and after COVID and the Great Resignation, and my kids are graduating now, like I got to find out what's next for me, And the only way that I can do that is I can either sell the business and, I'd sit on a pile of cash, but I'd be bored in 2 years, or I can stay involved. But in order to do that, I have to have somebody that can come on that I trust, that's going to lead it, take us to the next level, someone who's going to think differently than me. And the reason that you're here today is to talk about the CEO role. And I was like shocked.
Wow.
So not your typical Thursday morning breakfast. And that turned into a 2-month conversation, on a variety of topics, and ultimately decided to join the team. And yeah, that was over 3.5 years ago now. And it's been an awesome experience.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful journey. Congratulations. So tell us what SQA does, so we can understand the basics of what you're leading.
For sure. Yeah, it's a bit challenging because we do so many things. So we've been working as a leadership team to really hone that message better. And ultimately what it boils down to is we want people to be able to trust their supply chains. And it's such a simple concept, but it's so hard to execute. Because you look at a lot of these big companies, we primarily work in aerospace and pharmaceutical industries, amongst some others.
Places where supply chains are absolutely critical, right?
Exactly. We work
high
with
risk
nuclear energy startups, companies like Google for their data center build-outs. But in all of these cases, it's complex supply chains, typically highly regulated environments, and the consequences of failure are really bad. And in many cases,
you mentioned high consequence industries, right?
Yeah. So in many of these cases, it's like, hey, if my product fails, people die. And so the oversight there and the effort that's put into making sure the supply chain is, trustworthy is monumental. And many of these are global supply chains. So SQA has built a network of quality professionals in 65 countries that can go do work on behalf of these businesses. So, if a company like Johnson & Johnson needs to go audit 800 suppliers all over the world, they can either fly their own people, from their headquarters or hubs all over to do that, or they can use a company like us to say, okay, well, you've got, an audit in Malaysia. Okay, well, I have these auditors in Malaysia, and I can find one that matches the skill sets and needs for you, and we can go audit that facility on your behalf. Or, aerospace companies, a lot of it's on the inspection side. So like a company like SpaceX or Boeing will be buying these, very complex parts from their suppliers. And before they ship, they want to make sure that the part actually conforms to engineering specifications. So we can send, highly trained, qualified inspectors to the supplier site to do visual, dimensional, maybe even some functional checkouts before those parts ship, in order to make sure that once they arrive at the OEM, they can just go straight onto the shop floor, straight into inventory. They don't have to do a bunch of redundant checks themselves.
That's awesome. Yeah. So high consequence, critical supply chains for complex and regulatory businesses, right? So you guys are specialists.
Yes, very much so. It's a niche, but we like to think we do it pretty well, and we're continuing to hone that.
So you started 4 years ago. Roughly how large was the company when you started, and kind of, where are you today? Whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, so we're, family-owned business. So we don't typically share a lot of revenue numbers, but let's just say we were in like the we'll call it 20 to 30 million range when I started, and the goal for this year is to double that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's been pretty good. We've seen a lot of growth, a lot of challenges along the way. certain, industries and areas growing much faster than others. And so we're trying to look at an executive team to say like, all right, well, where do we invest? Where do we, try to replicate some of the magic that's happening in this industry and other industries? And where do we just acknowledge, okay, this industry is at kind of a plateau right now. Let's wait it out and put our efforts somewhere else. And those are all strategic skill sets and thought patterns that I never had to do before being in this
Yeah,
role. It's like,
totally.
I just execute on building this product. And so that's been a fun learning experience and challenge for me.
Yeah. So how do you think things have changed, or how have you proactively tried to change? This is a long time family-owned business, family-run business. You're the first external CEO to come in. What are some of the changes that you brought, and how long did it take you to kind of come up with the initiative and the courage to say, okay, well, just because it's always been done the same way, we're going to start doing some things a little different. Can you think of a couple things where you kind of felt confident enough to make those changes?
Yeah, for sure. I think, honing in on confidence is a good area to start. I think is somewhat, I was a senior manager before joining here, so not even close to the C-suite. And I think there was an initial period where I had to build some self-confidence and recognize like, all right, well, I'm here for a reason. Like I may not have experience doing this and I may not know all the right answers, but like, something has gotten me here, something has prepared me for this. And I
Right.
had to kind of, you know, uh, willingly step into those shoes and do that consciously because it wasn't like my natural tendency. And so I think that was, like imposter syndrome kind of deal starting out. And I still have that at times where it's just like,
Everybody does. Everyone I talk to, the imposter syndrome is one of the common things, because all of a sudden you're in the chair where everyone thinks you're supposed to know everything, and you realize I'm still the same guy I was yesterday.
yeah. And
I
that's,
know some things, but not everything.
and that's where I do like, networking with other CEOs and leaders and, organizations like YPO and, your Growth Elevated. I think your summit is awesome. But you quickly come to that realization. You're like,
That's
oh,
the secret, right? That you're not
from the
alone.
other side of the fence, I thought you guys had all the answers. And now I'm here and I realize we're all just confused and kind of, building the plane as we fly it. And there's some
That's why
comfort
it's so
in that.
valuable to have a peer network, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, that was like big on the personal note. I think from the company standpoint, one of the things that was most interesting to me to take this position was the fact that, okay, this is a very successful, stable business that's been built over, a few decades, great relationships with some of the biggest brand names in the world. And we've got this network of, really great people all over the world, but we haven't really done anything to capitalize on top of that with data analytics, digital products, and some of these things we had even started to build prior to me joining for our own internal usage to help us like be more efficient and things. And so seeing that opportunity to say, hey, I think we're sitting on a really big opportunity here to really kind of pivot and take this thing to the next level and look at how do I, add value to these clients by giving them, different types of information and insights and tools, not just, people and kind of external labor to augment their team. And so that's something that we've been working towards. Hired our first head of digital products last year. And she's working to like really build out that roadmap and strategy. And we're really just improving the team in that area to drive us forward. From kind of a cultural level, when I first stepped in, one of the biggest things that I realized was one of the company values was listed as harmony. And like at surface level, and I get why it was like it's something that is nice. You want to go to a place where you feel like everybody is working together and getting along, and so I understand the intent. But I also think in many cases where there's harmony, it's artificial. And if you have enough people working together and everybody agrees on something, that
Maybe you're not
usually
pushing
means,
each other enough,
yeah,
right?
that usually means that people don't care enough to even think about it, or that they don't feel safe enough to voice their opinion, or there's a lot of other, I think, underlying causes to that artificial harmony. And you'll see passive aggressiveness and people going around people. And, there's just a lot of symptoms from it that I, started to realize the more that I, got integrated with the team and kind of saw what was occurring and areas where we were being held back. And so we've kind of shifted to this, conflict culture.
That
which
sounds
is
like a big contrast. You're
yeah, it
coming in,
is.
it's a harmony culture, and you're saying, I want conflict? Really?
Yeah,
Tell me
and
more.
full disclaimer, we're still figuring it out. All right, the pendulum has probably swung too far in one direction, and we have to pull it back. But I think it was important to really emphasize the that diverse opinion and thought, and the ability to like have all of the ideas out on the table so that we could hone the best one. And I remember, it was like my first few weeks here, there's the stark contrast from the organizations I've been in that have been like fast-paced startups, SpaceX type cultures where people are constantly challenging you and like poking
Yeah,
holes in your
I've heard the
ideas.
SpaceX has the conflict culture, fine tuned,
Yeah, for sure.
or at
And
11.
yeah, yeah, maybe even a 15. But then coming here, I would throw out an idea in a meeting and people would just be like, okay, yeah, that's what we'll do. And I'm like, whoa, 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 time out. Like that was just an idea. I don't want us to go down a path that's bad. I'm just
So
here
you're
to,
expecting debate, right? So you threw an idea out and expect to chew on it and debate for a while and kind of have the competition of ideas rise. And you saw no debate. They just said sure.
yeah. And in some cases, right. And I also tried to be pretty refrained from like trying to throw out way too many ideas or stir the pot too much in my first few months,
Right.
right?
You
I
got to
really
learn.
wanted
You
to
got to make sure
observe.
you know what your
Yeah.
landscape is at the new role.
Yeah, and that's also something I've come to find is like a strength, but also a weakness or a blind spot of mine. Is like I can be a bit too analytical. Like the engineer in me wants to think through every little detail, and sometimes as a leader, especially at the CEO role, like decisiveness is key to success, and like making a bad decision is sometimes better than making no decision. And so that's something I'm still learning. But yeah, so we really worked on creating a culture where people felt comfortable challenging each other, and part of that was just through hiring some people and that came from different cultures. And
Yeah.
so
So
I
you
hired
gotta you gotta show people what it looks like to get it comfortable, right?
so I hired a former boss of mine named Paul Parkin, who I worked with at SpaceX. I worked for him at SpaceX and Rocket Lab, and we worked together at Heliogen. Um, and he is very different than me. He's very, very blunt in the way that he communicates, and he doesn't sugarcoat things. But he's doing it out of like a passion to succeed. But at times, like it can be really shocking to people that aren't used to that. And so, one of the things I've learned as a leader is like you can try to make all your weaknesses into strengths, but that's going to be an uphill battle. The good thing as leaders is like you can just hire people that have strengths that you don't have and allow that, to kind of just happen organically and naturally. And so it's something that, I still want to work on.
What was the strength you were hiring him for?
Really that like, uh, willingness to shake things up. It's like he's one of those that's just like
He was a
he
blunt
wants
instrument.
he wants action, he wants movement, he wants progress. He's like his one of his taglines is like, let's just get in the races. It's like we
Yeah,
don't have
get
to
started.
solve everything today, let's just start working on it.
Start running.
And it's the opposite of how I would typically approach problems, which is like, let's plan out the whole thing and figure out every little corner case. And so bringing on people that balance
So he's
the
your
team out in those areas.
urgency catalyst, maybe
For
a
sure.
little bit.
Yeah.
That's great.
And it's not just him. I hired a head of finance who's a little more that way. And I brought in a chief of staff just recently after listening to your chief of staff podcast.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Is it going
Yeah.
well? Is it helping you guys?
Yeah, it's great. Also, a guy I worked with at SpaceX Rocket Lab and Heliogen, and same thing. We did our disc profiles. We were like polar opposites in virtually every category, but we're fundamentally aligned, like philosophically, and we want the same thing. We just go about it very different ways. And so I think that's really important, is to make sure that you're hiring people that balance you out, and it can create more day-to-day challenges as you're having to manage some intense personalities and just people that are not really aligned in how they communicate. But I think if you can dial that in, it's really, really powerful.
So how do you think about the right people, right seats? I know that's one of the frameworks you've been thinking about. And so you have a cultural aspect that you're talking about, but you also need an expertise element, maybe, a capabilities. How do you think about the right seats and the right person for the right seat?
Yeah, definitely one of my biggest lessons, if not my biggest lesson that I've learned since being in this role, is just how crucial that is. And I think especially going into more of an executive role where you've got like a larger canvas to paint on, previously in my career, it's like I had receiving inspectors or inventory clerks or, quality engineers or like these kind of niche roles. And the job description was pretty clear. The performance criteria was pretty clear. And so it was very easy to see like, okay, this person isn't performing in this role. Like I need to take some action. I think as you get into the executive space, it becomes a lot murkier and it's harder to really put some of those quantifiable things behind it because you don't have like this checklist and this like deliverable every single day. You're kind of looking at these macro trends of like, well, how is this person moving us forward in the realm of sales or in the realm of financial analysis or all
Right.
these
And what
things.
does look, and you have to know what good looks like in all those different functional areas. And it's hard, right?
Yeah, which is this challenge. I'm an engineer. Like I don't really know what great looks like in a finance or a sales leader, but if it's more operations focused and engineering focused, I have a better idea. And so I think it took me, quite a while to really get a feel for that. And I'm still something that I'm learning. But I think, right person, right seat, like both sides of that are very important. But I think right person is the one that you have to get right first.
And do you have a set of values that either you inherited or you created? That how do you determine what the right person is? I mean, not necessarily role specific, but company specific. How do you align and judge what a right person is?
Yep. So we did create some new values shortly after I joined. And so those are trust, respect, accountability, dedication, and excellence. They spell trade. But it all kind of builds on the foundation of trust and respect. And there's like, how are we interacting with each other? But then kind of accumulates to what type of accountability are we having? How dedicated are we to this? And then excellence at the end of the day. It's like, are we producing something that is best in class? And we always want to strive to be best in class, leading edge, not just like acceptable. Because like I mentioned, what we're doing is in some cases life and death. So we can't just be like,
right.
yeah, good enough. Like it's got to be really stinking good. And so that's kind of a foundation for it, is looking at, okay, are these people checking all of these values? And then I think there's also just the team dynamic, that conflict culture, some of those things. And many of them can be tied back to trust and respect and like how that's managed. But it's challenging because when you say like wrong person, it seems like such a condemnation of like, you're a bad person. And I think that's something I've had to like learn and come to terms with, is it's not good or bad person. It's right or wrong person. And like this person can be a great person and they're just the wrong person for the team, the culture, the goals that you're trying to achieve. And so I think it was hard for me to like come to terms with that and being able to tell people like, hey, you were the right person, like for where the company was 10 years ago, and you're
Yeah,
just not
because
the right
companies
person for the
change.
next 10 years because we're
That's
trying to do
that's a
things
common
differently.
theme I see a lot. People are right for a certain stage, not necessarily right for the next stage.
Yeah. And it's also, I think, challenging in some ways to come into a business that's run for 27 years and has been successful, and to come in and, have the audacity to think that I know better. Right. And so I think there's challenges there too with like, in some cases I may be making the wrong decision, and I may, be eliminating someone or moving them to a different role that 2 years from now could turn out to be the wrong idea or the bad
Oh,
decision. But
those are the risks you got to take as a leader, right?
yeah. And so, but I think that right person is so important, because what I've found is like, as much as I postpone and procrastinate making that decision, like when that decision's finally made, there's like a palpable difference in the
You can
team.
feel it
Yeah. The
internally,
next
can't you?
team
Like
meeting,
it's
it's
not,
like, there's just a
you don't
buzz.
have to
There's
wait for results. You can feel it when you got the right person, right? You know
Mhm.
it when you
And
see it.
people start opening up, and yeah, this back to the challenge conflict culture. Like people start like voicing dissenting opinions in meetings. You're like, whoa, you've never spoken up like that before. And you realize like, oh, it's because they didn't want to upset this person when they said that thing. And so, you start, people start working around the people that aren't the right person. And you often don't realize how much that's happening until after that person is gone. And then you're like, wow, this, I should have made this decision sooner.
Oh, start to see the water flowing because there was like a blocker.
Yeah. And then right seat is maybe even harder because it's like sometimes you find, people that are the 100% the right people. They check all those trade values. They're like super bought into SQA. They're always, you know, even self-sacrificially doing the right thing for the business. And sometimes that can blind you to the fact that it's like, okay, this is an amazing person and they're 100% what this company needs. Like they're just not a right fit for this role. And we had a case recently where one of the members of my executive team, we've been doing 360 reviews with our team and really trying to help, just discover like where are our strengths, where are our blind spots, like how do we work through this? And this guy, Nick, he came up to me and was just like, hey, I want to talk. I think I've realized like I'm not in the right role. And like, I want to talk through options. And it was like a really deep, heartfelt, emotional conversation. And we were able to move him into a different role. And, I could see like this weight off his shoulders and he's,
it's fantastic.
He's contributing in a new way.
Like that.
Yeah. And it's cool because at many organizations, people just have this feeling of like, I just have to put my head down and work harder and eventually I'll either succeed or get fired or I'll get burnt out and I'll go find another job. And so, kudos to Nick. And, we've given him a lot of, public recognition to say like, hey, this is an example of exactly how we want to be operating as a team, is like transparent with our issues, like talk through it. We can work together to find a solution. You don't have to struggle in silence and just hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
That's a great piece of feedback for you as a leader, that he had the confidence to come talk to you and you were able to resolve it in a way that was a win for him and the company. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Because I told you, like the worst thing that could have happened would be Nick goes and looks for another job because he feels like he's just, destined to fail here and, just working way too hard and all those things to try to overcome these areas where it's just like this role is not, aligned with the areas where he's really strong and where he excels. And so let's go find one where he can.
Absolutely. So it sounds like these things are working. You've been working on the team quite a bit. Like, what else have you done to kind of, like you said, you're on pace to maybe double the business here within 4 years. What else did you do to kind of achieve that kind of growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has been around like trying to really implement operational excellence and bring in some different leaders and people with firsthand experience out there doing what the clients do. I mentioned, hiring a former boss of mine.
Yeah.
My chief of staff.
So hiring domain expertise.
Yeah. Chief of staff being from
looks like. Yep.
From SpaceX and Rocket Lab. We've hired in other, leaders and people that come with that firsthand experience because, it's one thing to kind of work in the industry as a service provider. It's another thing to I used to have a desk on the shop floor and I had to go to daily production meetings and I would hear about all the supply chain issues and I would, go to suppliers and try to resolve them. And so there's an element of like having some of that firsthand experience is important. And then how do we set a bar for ourselves that's even higher than what our clients are going to set for us? And so, really just kind of implementing like daily check-ins with the team, like the same way you would have a stand-up meeting, at the beginning of a production shift. Like we have that on the operation side of our business where they're looking at, all right, where are all the, 200 suppliers that we need to get to today? And do we have people assigned and are they going to get there on time? And do they have the right skill sets that they need? And where is our capacity a little lower than it needs to be? And we should go proactively higher there so that we're not, caught in a position where the clients need help in Oregon and we don't have anyone in Oregon with that skill set. Or the other side was happening a lot too, where we would hire people in an area but not give them enough work to keep them busy because they were just on one of our programs. And so we cross-trained them to other programs because we were finding often it was our best people that would leave because they could go get work somewhere else and do 40 hours a week. And we were only giving them 20 hours a week. And so being able to identify that and just put in processes to monitor that and keep our best people, fully utilized has been something that has, lowered our attrition substantially in that area and enabled us to build more of a consistent, reliable workforce that clients can really count on. And so I think we've seen in some of these cases in some of our big programs, like clients are really expressing, beyond satisfaction. Like, just, you guys are awesome. Like, this is amazing. I didn't expect you to be able to get there that fast, or to keep, the escapes this low and all these things.
That's awesome when you get that kind of client feedback, isn't it?
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. We get negative client feedback too. We are not perfect by any means, but I think being able to just see, like, continually progress on that curve, and learning how to get better, how to be more proactive with things, so that, we're ultimately finding out and fixing them before the client has to tell us that we have a problem. And that's where we want to be.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And that good client feedback is so rewarding. So congratulations on all the learning, all the progress at the company. You're hitting on some of these key lessons around people and building the right teams, and hugely helpful to our audience. As you think about, like, where do you learn from? What are some of your favorite books or podcasts or things? Like, how are you learning as a first time CEO, and how are you treating your leadership journey in terms of how you learn, and what you recommend to other people who are in similar roles?
For sure. I mean, I think, like, it's a combination of a lot of things. I've started listening to more podcasts recently. That has historically not been a huge part of my entertainment selection, but I've noticed myself doing that more now. I try to kind of alternate books between, like, leadership, nonfiction stuff, and some fiction, which mostly tends to be sci-fi because I'm a bit of a space nerd.
Well, you were in the right place then.
Yeah,
when you started this
so
space
just to kind of keep it interesting, and you can learn a lot from fiction too, just creative ideas and things. But yeah, some of the books that I would definitely recommend. Five Dysfunctions of a Team. You and I were talking about
a classic one, absolutely.
And it really does feed into a lot of what I've talked about, of creating that culture of trust and the ability to have conflict, and ultimately, focus on results. So that's a really good one to do, like, with a team as well. So we had our whole team read it. We're actually talking about sometime soon doing an offsite and going through the worksheet on it, where you actually score your team.
That's fantastic.
Some discussions around
that's
it.
Great.
Because yeah, we've made improvement, but there are times where you see, like, yeah, we're not there. We've still got some issues.
It's a really well structured program.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great one. Think Again: The Power of Unlearning, I think is what it is. Or it's
Adam Grant.
Adam Grant, yes.
The power of knowing what you don't know.
Power of Knowing What You Don't Know, yes. And it is a great book. I need to reread it. I read it, like, right around the time I was starting this role.
I'm gonna put that on my list. I haven't read that one yet. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, really interesting. Dives into a lot of the psychological safety stuff, and why cultures that challenge each other are the most successful, and those types of things. And I think he just encapsulates things in a really nice package that make it easy to digest. And then Turn the Ship Around is another one.
I like that one. Our mutual friend Michael recommended that one to me.
And so that's one where it's written by a Navy admiral, I believe, retired, and he commanded this submarine that the long story short is, he was given this assignment, was going to be assigned the newest, best ship in the fleet. A few months before, they said, nope, just kidding. Here's the worst performing, oldest submarine in every metric. And so, like, he had to totally flip the culture on its head. And it was especially interesting being within the military, where everything is, super rigid and set in their ways of, like, top-down leadership. And he created this culture of bottom-up leadership and really empowered people. So I think it's good to show. If you can do that in the military, you can do that anywhere.
Exactly. I mean, that was a really different approach that he took, and in that kind of command and control environment, to actually empower people and get people to take ownership of the different areas. I remember that was a really impressive leadership story.
And then, we mentioned it earlier, but, like, just networking. I mean, that's something that I've been learning a lot, especially from our now chairman, founder and former CEO, Mike McKay. And he is just, like, world-class networker, and he's not an engineer. Like, he's not running the technical side of the business, but he understands people, he understands relationships, and he's built such an incredible network. And, it's like meaningful connection too. It's not just like, hey, can I, pick your brain on this business idea? It's like, he really gets to know them as a person, their families, their life goals, and so that's been something I've been really just trying to watch and learn, working with him and, getting to know him better is how he leverages that to, basically become much more powerful through this group of people than any one person can ever be on their own. And I've always been a pretty independent person, just like, oh, I can just work harder and do it. And I'm definitely realizing like the power of having that network of people that you can just go to and bring them an issue and get their opinion, or just like listen to what's going on in their business and the challenges that they're encountering. And it may resonate really big with you right now, or it may be something that 6 months from now you encounter something. You're like, oh, I remember like that guy said that he dealt with something like this. Like, let me give him a call. Like maybe we can go get lunch and I can pick his brain on it. So, I mean, that's huge. It's just finding other people that are all dealing with the same challenges you are, and we're all trying to
Well, it
figure it
sounds
out.
like you guys are a great partnership. You're bringing in the engineering and operationals, and he's got the relationship and the networking, and that's a very powerful combo.
Yeah, for sure. It's cool when we get to go out and, travel and meet clients together and take them out to dinner and stuff. I think, we were talking about this. I feel like there's an interesting dynamic. I'm 20 years younger than him. I'm kind of, close. He started SQA when he was 27, and grew it into, an amazing business. But I think like we'll meet with clients that are, maybe closer to his age, and they kind of like, there's this weird triangle where they resonate a lot with him and where he's at in his life and, his experiences, but then they also kind of see a younger version of him and themselves and me. And so, it's like, it just creates this really cool environment where, people want to like share their wisdom and their experiences and their challenges and like learn from each other. And so, yeah, we're hoping to get out and do that more.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Michael, thanks for sharing your story with us today. It's super exciting. Congratulations on all the progress and all the learnings.
Thanks, Julian. I mean, it's still a work in progress for sure, and so I'm sure I will even look back on some of the things we talked about here today a year from now and be like, "Wow, that was wrong." But I think that's what makes it so exciting is you don't have to have it all figured out. I used to really shy away from doing any sort of public engagements like this because of some of that imposter syndrome or whatever. Just like, well, I don't have it figured out. How am I going to sit up here and tell everyone else? And I heard someone speak at a conference one time and she was like, you don't have to have it all figured out. Like there are people in your career or in your network that are 2 or 3 steps behind you. And if you're 2 or 3 steps ahead, just tell them what you learned in the last two or three
Yeah,
steps.
that's what
And it
this is
still
all
helps
about. We're
them.
just trying to
Yeah.
share experiences and stories because there's always people climbing the mountain behind us. That's our entire theme. So that was summarized perfectly. Awesome. Well, thank you, Michael. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Julian. Appreciate it.